afternoon, everybody. Let me see if I can get a pointer going here. Nope, probably not. Okay. Let me just make sure that this clicker works. Perfect. All right. I'd like to start by thanking the organizers for asking me to speak today, Sheree and the rest of the team. The talk will be divided into two separate sections. First, I'll do an introduction, both to myself as well as the topic. And then I'll go through a little bit more detail into some of the research that's been happening at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's research station in Harrow. I'll give some brief examples. I don't have time to go through all of the data, but I'll give you some good examples of what's been happening. For those who don't know, OMAFRA has a whole greenhouse team. So besides myself, my colleague Kara McCreary and I are the greenhouse vegetable specialists. I deal more on the production side of things, and she deals with pest management and any kind of disease issues. I deal more with lighting, irrigation control, environment control, anything like that. We also have two floriculture specialists. So Abby and Sarah are the floriculture specialists. So Kara and I are based out of the Harrow Research and Development Center, whereas Abby and Sarah are in Vineland. Abby is my counterpart in floriculture. She's on the production side, and Sarah is Kara's counterpart in floriculture. She deals more with pest management and disease. You can also see here the website for our blogs. So the ongreenhousevegetables.ca is the blog that myself and Kara run. Subscribe to that, and you'll get some really good information as well as keep up to date on our activities. And Abby and Sarah, they have their onfloriculture.com blog. As I mentioned, Kara and I are based out of Agriculture Agri-Food Canada's Harrow Research and Development Center. That is a federal research station. We're provincial employees, but we have offices there. We work very closely with the researchers at AFC Harrow. Our portfolios include any food, whether it's vegetables or fruit that's produced in a controlled environment, so in a greenhouse or a warehouse vertical farm kind of system. We work very closely with researchers as well as do a lot of training and education through what we call knowledge transfer and translation. A number of the resources that you can access include, as I mentioned, the ongreenhousevegetables.ca blog. On there, you can find a lot of great information, including some recordings of previous educational seminars or workshops that we've had, both online as well as in person. And if you subscribe to that, you can stay up to date. We also help organize the Canadian Greenhouse Conference. So the CGC is a great place to go. It's an annual conference in Niagara Falls, typically at the beginning of October. So come on out, check it out. It has a huge trade show floor at the Niagara Convention Center. We also have concurrent speaker sessions that have lots of great information about production, IPM, energy, really anything that has to do with controlled environment agriculture. We also collaborate with Greenhouse Canada on a lot of things. So Greenhouse Canada magazine is a free online magazine. If you don't know it, check it out. It's a great resource as well. Okay, so the information that I'm going to talk about today is available in a couple of articles. Well, it's in one article that's been published in a couple of places, I should say. This is Finding the Right Light Recipe article, published both on our blog as well as in Greenhouse Canada magazine. I wrote this in collaboration with Dr. Xiuming Hao at AFC. He's the lead researcher on a lot of this information. But before I go into the specifics, just wanted to start out by introducing lighting and first, what light is. It is a type of electromagnetic radiation that has that wave-particle duality. So it's basically photons that are moving in a wave-like fashion. You can see from this slide that the visible light spectrum between 400 and 700, what we call photosynthetic active radiation, is only a small part of that whole electromagnetic radiation spectrum that you can see there. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those different, the different colors do. So here's the PAR spectrum. I'm not going to go into this slide very much. There's a lot of info here. I just wanted to put this out so when you do have access to the presentation, you have a little bit of understanding of what each of these lights do and how they affect the plant physiology. For example, you can see with the blue light, it does increase the model conductance, which means it opens up the stomats for improved gas exchange. Whereas something like the green light, you can see there, it reduces stomatal opening. That means the stomats are closed at that point and reduces that gas exchange. That's very important for photosynthesis. So just a slide really more for your information and to prove the different things that the light colors do. We can measure light in a number of different ways. Some of the things that I'll be talking about is really the power of light, and that's usually measured in watts per meter squared. So that's really the total amount of light power that is impacting a growing area. But when we're looking at the photosynthetic active radiation or the PAR spectrum, we typically talk in photosynthetic photon flux density. I think the previous speaker kind of mentioned that with ppfd. And that's typically measured in micromoles per meter squared per second. The natural sunlight in northern regions, like in Canada, is plentiful during the summer. But when it comes to the rest of the seasons in the autumn, in the winter, in the early spring, we do have shortages in terms of that solar radiation that's required for full production for agricultural crops. So our season is fairly short, a lot shorter than the southern regions. And that's why we require that supplemental lighting to meet the needs of the plants in these regions. You can see there, a full sun on a sunny day in the summertime can give you anywhere between 500 to 1,000 watts per meter squared. Whereas on a cloudy winter day in southern Ontario, which is the most southern tip of the country, we get less than 100 watts per meter squared. So just give you an idea of really the limitations that we're facing. The lights that are typically used in greenhouses, as well as the vertical farms, really come in two main types. And there are others, but these are the most popular ones that are used. First is the traditional high pressure sodium lights. So these are the typical, street lights that were just taken from that type of application and put in greenhouses. You can see that they do produce high temperature. A lot of radiant heat comes off of these lamps. So you're not only producing light, but you're also producing heat. They're typically only used for top lighting because of this characteristics. You're not able to make it to get it closer to the canopy because it's too hot. And the fixture PAR efficiency can range anywhere between 0.9 to about 1.8 micromoles per joule, depending on the model. The more recent, invention is the light-emitting diodes, and these have a number of advantages. First of all, as was mentioned, they have a low operating temperature, so you're able to use these not only as top lighting, but also as interlighting, as was mentioned. They have a very flexible spectral composition, so you can have not just the full spectrum, not just the yellow light that the HPS lights give you, but you can really, basically give you any light that you want, depending on the model and the composition. And you can see the efficiency of these lights is significantly improved, about 2 to 4 micromoles per joule. And what we're also working on with some companies that are even more advanced than that, the pulse LED lighting systems that could surpass this PAR efficiency. So there's a lot of hope in some of the new technologies coming out in terms of reducing or increasing the energy efficiency. So a number of things to consider when using HPS or LED lights is really they affect plant physiology in completely different ways. So the HPS lights, typically if you're growing a generative cultivar in a greenhouse, they do induce faster senescence. Whereas if you're growing the same cultivar under an LED light, all of a sudden you have a lot more plant vigor or maybe early fruit set. So what I'm trying to say here is growing the same plants in the same greenhouse under HPS lights or LEDs can give you vastly different results. Besides the type of light, there are four main aspects to lighting that a producer or researcher needs to keep in mind. So we did talk about the spectrum. We talked a little bit about the intensity, the distribution, whether it's top lighting, interlighting, whether it's a combination. But I'll talk a little bit more about the photo period. So the photo period is very important. Not only do you need to think about the intensity, but how long you're using the lights for, because a combination of the intensity and the photo period gives you the very important daily light integral. And then DLI is measured in moles per meter squared per day. And every crop needs a certain threshold of DLI in order to produce optimally. And typically we have these recommendations for the big three crops that are grown in greenhouses, whether it's a cucumber, a tomato, or sweet pepper. You have a total DLI that you need to provide. And it's, about 20 DLI moles per meter squared per day for cucumber or tomato, a little bit less for sweet pepper. That intensity also is a little bit higher for cucumbers and tomato than it is for pepper plants. And as I mentioned, the photo period is very important in terms of regulating and getting you the DLI that you're looking for. So there are a number of different ways to light a crop, and I'll talk about some of the experiments done with top lighting, interlighting, and some experiments that are in the article that I won't have time to talk about today have a hybrid system where you have both the top lighting as well as the interlighting to give you the most biggest bang for your buck. Okay, so this is one of the examples of some of the experiments that's been done at the Harrow Research and Development Center. In 2019, there was a pepper crop that was grown under top HPS lights, but they also did a hybrid system where it was HPS as well as LED. And what the researchers did is test not only the top versus the hybrid system. They also looked at the different colors of the LEDs, whether it's a white light, so broad spectrum, 400 to 700 nanometers, red, blue. These are the more purplish colors that you may be familiar with. And some included the far red aspect, so about 725 to 750 nanometers. And you can see there the intensity of the HPS lights, as well as the intensity of the LEDs with the different treatments. And the photo period that was used, about 18 hours. And there was a control set that there was no lighting when the sunlight exceeded 300 watts per meter squared. And what we see from the results of this experiment is that there was definitely taller plants when you're using the LEDs, but there is some chlorosis that we saw under the white LEDs. The far red light was very important in increasing height because the pepper plants tend to stack a lot of the peppers if you don't have far red in that recipe. So that was very important in order to kind of stretch that plant out so you're able to harvest the peppers a lot more easily. And unlike some of the tomato experiments that are talked about in the articles, yield also increased in the later stages of winter production, because what we saw with a lot of the tomato and cucumber trials is that increase in yield with these systems mainly happened early on in the winter and not so much later when you had natural sunlight increasing. So besides these fixed intensity, kind of fixed photo period type experiments, the advent of dynamic lighting came on board, where we were able to change not only the spectrum of the LEDs, but the intensity. And that was really a big change for the industry. And the researchers at AFC really wanted to understand how we can use the dynamic lighting in the best way possible. So with what is dynamic lighting? It's really the ability to change that light spectrum as well as the light intensity whenever you wanted to. So you can change it during the day, different times of the day, or at different times of the year. And the advantage of using this dynamic lighting is that it enables us to have longer photo periods with lower light intensities. And the idea behind this is that you're able to lower your light fixture capital costs because you don't need as much light, but you're giving the plant that DLI, right? Because you're lowering the intensity, but you're increasing that photo period. So you're still hitting that DLI target, and the plant doesn't care how you give it to it. You know, as long as it's getting that DLI within a 24-hour period, the plant is happy. So you can play around with the photo period and the intensity and reduce your capital costs. Also in Ontario, we're very lucky to have low electricity prices in the evening, time of use pricing. So if we're able to take advantage of those low electricity prices for producers so that you can light at night and not during high demand during the day, that of course is a win. And of course, there's also heat demand that I don't talk about in this talk, but it's always a factor for producing food in the northern regions like Canada. So when you're using lights at night, even if they're dim LEDs, there's always going to be heat that's produced, and that heat can be used for heating the crop. And of course, it does help with some of the issues with light abatement curtains that I'm not really going to get into right now. So when the researchers first started really using this low intensity, long photo period recipe, there were some issues. Plants did not like the long photo periods. There was leaf chlorosis, for example, in these pepper plants and these tomato plants. When you increase the light with white LEDs or HPS under this intensity, they just didn't really like that very much. And the question was, is there anything that can be done? Is there another way of lighting plants that will alleviate that photo period injury? And this was the first successful experiment coming out of Harrow in 2019, where they did 24-hour dynamic lighting of tomato plants using this recipe. So they compared the traditional 12-hour red and blue, like a purplish light, that was followed by 12 hours of darkness. That was the traditional way of doing it, versus the 24-hour dynamic lighting where you had red during the day, blue at night. But you can see here, when you add up the intensity of the blue and the intensity of the red and the amount of time that the plants were giving the blue and the red, the DLI stays exactly the same. And what they found with this particular recipe is there was no photo period injury, which was a huge milestone for the researchers. In the early weeks, the 24-hour light recipe produced 12% more leaf area, 10% more stem fresh weight, and heavier fruit as well. Now that didn't last for the whole season, but overall, the plants produced as they did for the other recipe. Now the key is the cost. Because the researchers were lighting in the evening, the cost was dramatically reduced because you didn't necessarily have to contend with the high electricity prices during the day. So just to wrap up some of the conclusions from this, as well as the other experiments that I mentioned in the that we go through in the article, is that interlighting can improve fruit quality as well as fruit chlorophyll for mini cucumbers. Far red light, as I mentioned, is beneficial for tomato and especially pepper crops, like I showed here with the stacking issue that could happen if you don't give peppers that far red light that they need. Microgreens, we showed in this article that when the researchers did the 24-hour lighting with microgreens under 100% artificial light, again, they reduced that light fixture cost. They reduced the electrical bill because they were lighting in the off-peak hours more than before. So that really helped reduce the cost of production. And alternating lighting with different intensities and spectra can really prevent that photoperiod injury that I mentioned. So I'd like to wrap up by thanking everybody that was involved in this research. As you can see here, it's a huge team that it takes, as well as collaboration with our partners at Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers, our funding partners, and all of the growers that were also involved, because we can't do this without the commercial growers and our tech company partners as well. So if you have any questions for me, you can email me or you can scan this nice little QR code here. I'll download my contact info right to your phone. If you're online or in person, I think this works. If it doesn't, just email me. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. And I'll take any questions that you may have. Thanks very much.